world, welcome back to another devlog from my financial literacy casual educational game called Rainy Day. As promised from the last devlog, the game now has the basics of the scoring system I intend to use and emphasize the financial literacy part of the overall game idea. As you will see as of now, the scoring system is very straightforward. It increments as the player succeeds to stack an object and decrements per stacked object that falls from the stack. And again, if you have been following the project, the game produces a random value per round of gameplay for the player to stack. Currently, in my opinion, stacking anything that is 40% or more of that produced value is challenging enough, but this is a percentage I'm willing to change once the beta test opens up for all of you to voice out your opinions and design the game with me. With that said, the percentage below the score counter is just that. It tells the player just how much of the valued objects that are expected to be dropped for that round that they were able to successfully stack. The larger the generated number for the round, the harder it gets to achieve 100% success of stacking them all. This is where the deposit mechanic comes in useful. The player initially gets one deposit for the round and will require to work for another by successfully stacking just at least half of what is expected to drop. By at least half, I mean the 40%, which is again open for change. With the deposit mechanic, the player doesn't risk losing their valued stack when it collapses and quote unquote saves them for the current round. When pressed just below the 40% threshold, the round basically ends and the player is credited for the value they have stacked. On the other hand, it is optimally used when the player reaches or surpasses the threshold because the extra deposit reward will essentially reset the round. At this point, the deposit feature will clear the current stack and credit the player with its total value, giving them a better chance at getting the highest score possible for the round to even a perfect 100%. And I'm getting excited having the start of the financial literacy part of the game going. It's very subtle to stay true to the casual genre, but it's there. It'll be in the future upgraded visual assets, use of words such as deposit, and the gameplay itself with its looming get and save as much as you can from each round vibe. As I develop the game, more and more ideas pop up in my head, with some being too extra or luxurious of a feature to implement, while some are actually good to be implemented quality ideas. I can see this being common for any profession, and I can only speak for game development, but it can really clutter the mind. This is where Trello comes in super handy for me. In there, I can really just dump any thoughts relating to my game aside from just general project management in agile-like ways, and I really recommend it. The simple process of putting thoughts down somewhere really frees my brain for other things that may come up, and I can access everything about my game from anywhere. And I keep it simple. First, I have a list for things I know needs to get done for the game, and I call this the sprint backlog. And second, I have a list for major things that I can take from the backlogs, which I turn into these little sprints where I break it down into smaller objectives to see how long it would take me to do. Third, I have an in progress list for objectives and sprints that I will commit to. Fourth, a completed objectives and a completed sprints list to frame my accomplishments and keep me going. I find this really useful, especially with any software development where the amount of work done in seemingly small features get overlooked. Fifth, a list for what I consider good ideas and for those feature creeps that are too extra or luxurious. And lastly, a bugs list, which usually ends up in the sprint backlogs or in the in progress list. As an example, and is actually part of this devlog, would be a bug I had with the object spawning in camera view, which I had simply fixed using Unity's viewport to world point function. And looking at my sprint backlog, I could start adding variety in the types of objects that fall, but I really don't have any ideas for that yet that I really like, so I may tackle a much newer task with implementing a daily system for limiting the value of collectibles that will be available for the player per day. But as usual, subscribe on here or on your preferred media in my link tree down in the description to stay updated. And if you're ever interested in having your name forever embedded in the startup screen of the game once it's out, consider doing a top donation subscription tier on my website while bringing my dream life closer to reality at the same time. Anything helps, so even a free subscription on my website, it's huge, and you will be emailed a link to beta test Rainy Day once it's available. Thank you for listening, and special thank you shout out to my website supporters who donated in October. Thank you, Laura Milligan.